So these are the 9 industries to avoid if you're looking at starting your own business in 2024. My name is Lester, and today we're going to look at the 9 industries to avoid when starting a business in 2024. Now, the first one might come as a bit of a surprise because it is restaurants and cafes. And why it comes as a surprise is because we've built the Coffee Shop Academy for people that are looking at starting their own coffee shop or their own restaurant. Now, the reason we've built that is because we've seen a fundamental failure in that industry. More than 75% of independent coffee shop businesses fail within the first 5 years. I'd actually go as far as saying is 80 to 85% of them fail. And the reason for that is not a strong enough ecosystem to support the smaller businesses that are coming through. And if you are in Cape Town, there are more coffee shops in Cape Town per capita than there are in New York. So the reason we don't necessarily want people to go into that industry, because one, it is capital intensive. You need to spend at least 500 to 1 million rand to set up a proper cafe. And this is only cafes. These are not even restaurants. That might be twice the amount that we are talking about. So I would say, instead of opening up a coffee shop, rather look at alternative options. There are 15 alternative options that are out there. We will put that in a separate podcast, but the one idea I would advise you to look into, look at a corporate company that are looking at feeding their staff, especially if there's about 200 to 300 staff members working in that building. So if you're following a canteen style business, in certain cases, there might even be certain preferential procurement opportunities if you're a certain color, if you're a certain age, if you're a certain gender, and you might tap into the enterprise and supply development beneficiary program, which means that if you're setting up your cafe within the building of this corporate company, one, you don't have to pay the rental. Two, there's a more predictable form of income, especially if the staff members are getting some sort of voucher from the company which they can redeem. That also means that you'll be paid in advance every month, so you won't really struggle with the conventional cash flow issues that most of these small businesses or most of these small cafes have when they are starting out. So instead of starting out your own retail styled cafe where you are at the mercy of people's buying behavior, where you're at the mercy of their taste buds, where you are at the mercy of their budgets, rather opt for a canteen style based business that is slightly more predictable and the risk is slightly more mitigated. Option 2 is retail apparel. In fact, that goes as far as saying any kind of apparel or any kind of retail you should stay away from. The reason we're saying stay away from the retail style businesses are the landlords, they would insist on at least 12 months or 24 months as a lease. You cannot go and say, I want to test the waters for 1 month or 2 months or 3 months. It just doesn't work that way. Landlords, they want a strong tenant. They want to know that you are able to pay month in, month out. You'll need to comply with all of their requirements. So they'll have to look at your cash flow. They'll have to look at every small thing to qualify you to be a good tenant for them. And remember, the higher the premium, or the more premium the location, the higher the rental is going to be. So if you're looking at a place where there's lots of foot traffic, you might end up spending 50,000 Rand, 60,000, 80,000 Rand per month on that rental. But there's no guarantee that you're going to get the amount of sales that can justify that rental income. So that is only one aspect of why I would avoid having an actual brick and mortar store. Now, retail is by no means dead, but if you're starting out, you don't want to take on that kind of operating expenses when there's no form of guarantee or there's no brand that will justify the amount of people that is going to come to you. A lot of people will look at where my competitors set up, and that is where my market is. And if you're going into an area where you have a lot of competition, understand that you need to have a very strong value proposition. Why would people leave the existing service provider to start buying from you if you don't have anything of significance to offer? My recommendation would be rather start an online store, go the e-commerce route. One, you avoid a lot of the brick and mortar complications that you would get. And it might not be a big problem where it's the location that doesn't work, but it could be something as subtle as 1 or 2 homeless people that are laying on the side of the road that's spooking your customers away. They have a terrible experience and they might not come back. When you are in an industry where there's such a lot of competition, you need to make sure that you are executing everything to the best of the ability. And most of these things are out of your control. If you're on the e-commerce space, there's a lot more manageables. There are things that you can control. There are things that you can put in place that will drive more traffic to you. And of course, you need to have the proper platforms and everything in place. So if you're looking at your social media strategy, you're looking at your good e-commerce site, the right color scheme, you need to have the right logistical model in place. But all of those things are a lot easier to do than actually opening up a brick and mortar store. So number 2 is, instead of a retail store, rather go the e-commerce route. Number 3, we're looking at trucking and logistics. Now, a lot of people might say, I know someone that is in trucking, they're making a lot of money, they seem to be doing well for themselves. And I would argue that that is the rare exception. I have a very good friend. He's been in this game for about 6-7 years. He has about 5 trucks. And even when we get together on weekends, he's constantly busy on the phone. Something is going wrong. Either his truck driver didn't come in today, so they need to scramble. It's not like in a retail store where you can just, fill in the person that did not come to work today and do that person's job. Remember, these are specialized people that have permits, and if they don't come to work today, it could cost 15,000, 16, up to 50,000 Rand per day if that person decided to not come into work because they weren't feeling like it, because they're hungover, because they're not feeling too well. So those are some of the risks that they are exposed to in this industry. Another one might be that if the truck is in an accident, now there's a third-party claim and your insurance premium goes up, and they're already paying between 20 and 30,000 Rand per month. So it's an extremely expensive industry, not only to get into, but also to stay in. I would rather recommend that you go be a forwarding agent or just be a deal facilitator. If you know that this is a buyer, this is the guy that has the resources to do everything, you connect them together and you earn a commission based on introducing those two people to each other. So that way, you don't have to spend 30 to 40 million Rand in investing in the trucks, into the vehicles, into the machinery. You don't have to pay the port fees. You don't have to pay the rental space to actually park the trucks, because that is another big expense that you need to fork out when you're going into this industry. Those are better ways you can mitigate that risk when looking at going into the logistics space. The next one is the manufacturing of products. Now, most manufactured products usually gets imported from the East. 15 to 20 years ago, South Africa was a booming industry, especially in the textile manufacturing. But as soon as companies like Mr. Price and Choice Clothing started importing them from the East, hundreds of thousands of jobs were lost in the process. Not only that, we've entered the Industrial Revolution, where everything is automated, and where there were industries that mass-produced employment. Now there are robotic arms that can do things more efficiently, and yes, there might be a once-off cost from a capital expensive, but from an operating expense, that cost is severely decreased. So instead of going into manufacturing, there's also a drop shipping component that you can do. When we started our very first business more than a decade ago, that was candle manufacturing. And when we pitched for funding, one of the funders asked us, what business are you actually in? Because at that point we were manufacturing the candles, we were delivering them to our customers, which in this case was restaurants. We also wanted to open up a shop front, so for those people that want to the end users that wanted to come into the store and buy from us directly, we offered all of that. And he said, you're spreading yourself too thin in an industry where you have to do manufacturing, where you have to do logistics, where you have to be the shop front. You are going to burn yourself out. And that is exactly what happens. 2 to 3 years thereafter, we got to a point where we said, we can't do this to ourselves anymore, because we're scrambling to make ends meet, and my time is tied up. We didn't have enough leverage at that point to pay someone to come in, do this for us, do that for us. So I was the driver, I was the manufacturer, I was the salesperson, I was the marketing, I was the finance guy, I was the admin. And you just get to a point where you're inefficient because you're trying to do everything in an attempt to save costs. Rather go the drop shipping route. So if I had to go back into the candle manufacturing industry now, I would actually go to 1 or 2 of the guys that are still making candles that follow the same model that I followed back then. And I would say, listen, I have a network of clients, whether it be the restaurant groups, whether it be corporate gift companies, or whether it just be retail style stores. I would go to those manufacturers and I would say, let us sell some of these candles for you. We already have a network of clients. If you're selling them for 20 Rand per unit, I'd want you to come down to 18 Rand or maybe 17 Rand so that I can have a bit of a markup on there. And I would then take it from 20 Rand to 22 Rand, 25 Rand, and I would then take that surplus. So instead of me having to invest into the equipment of making these candles myself, I could just buy it from them. I could either get them to deliver directly to my client, which could be a bit risky because if they decide to cut me as the middleman out, they could connect with my clients directly, or I could do the logistics for them. And if I just did a calculation, if that business alone would make 30,000 Rand per month in profit, I'd probably be doing the driving myself, or I'd employ one driver to do that for me. I pay the driver between 5,000 and 6,000 Rand because he's only working a few hours per day. I might buy a vehicle that would cost me less than 100,000 Rand because you don't need a big industrial sized vehicle. So after all of my expenses, if I make about 25,000 Rand per month in terms of net profit, you take the 25,000, multiply that by 36 months, that is the time frame that the average investor would want to see a return. If I decide to take this business, package it well enough, and then sell it, I could easily sell this business for just under 1 million Rand. So it's about 900,000 Rand that I could potentially sell this business for. And I haven't invested in manufacturing. I haven't invested in equipment. I haven't had to employ masses of staff, because that is more than likely what the manufacturing industry will expect of you if you're going that route. So instead of going into the manufacturing of it, rather go into drop shipping, whether it means that you have to import things on a consolidated shipment, which is much easier now than it was 5 to 6 years ago, or you can just meet with 1 or 2 local manufacturers and actually just do the sales for them, or bring your own client base in, negotiate the sales process there, you get it at a slightly discounted rate, and you distribute that through your client network. So the next one is real estate. Now, a lot of people watch episodes like Selling Sunset or Lux Listings Sydney, and they think that if they sell a property, they're going to get tons and tons of commission. And that might eventually happen. The longer you are in the industry, the more likely you will get to that sort of level. But more than likely, people go into an industry, they see that, you know, someone from Selling Sunset, they got a 15 million Rand commission once it's translated into Rand, and you might go into the industry with that kind of expectation. We found that when people have been in the property space, they've been in there for years and years and years and still waiting for some sort of breakthrough. In fact, I met with a property agent a couple of years ago, and they said at that point they've been in this game for close to 15 years, and all they could do is draw a basic salary at the end of each month, and they owned this company. So there are months where they actually don't make any kinds of commission. That means that the money that they've kind of built up in their coffers has to sustain them for that extended period. And if you don't make money for 3 months, then they could be in a situation where they don't have any money at all. And these are people that are not just property brokers, but they are property entrepreneurs as well. So you need to manage your expectation if you are looking at going into this industry. My personal experience, or my personal opinion, would be rather set up a YouTube channel where you explore properties and go into different aspects of it. There's a guy I follow by the name of Ines Jelmezer, and he goes all over the world and he explores and does tours of different properties, whether it's in Palo Alto or Beverly Hills or Cape Town here in Camps Bay. And there are more and more local channels that are popping up that are offering the same thing, because it could be just as profitable. I did a basic calculation on what Ines makes from his YouTube channel, and given that this is not something that happened overnight. It took a bit of time for him to get there. At first, he started out doing the bare minimum, and then he invested in fancier equipment and better lighting, better sound, better aesthetics. And as time went on, he actually got to a point where, converted to rands, he makes close to 40 million Rand per year. So that is a really profitable business, and you don't have to invest in all the things that the property industry requires you to invest in if you're going into that industry. Also, you don't need special licenses to do the kinds of things that they are doing. So I would say that is a little bit easier. It's not easy, but it's a little bit easier to make a success of that business than it would be to build a property practice. The next one, we have general consulting. Now, when it comes to general, anything general, that's a bit of a red flag. General means that you don't have a specific specialty that you're focusing on. Let's say you are a personal trainer or a business coach. There are a dime a dozen out there. If you don't have a strong enough value proposition, or if you don't have a strong enough brand, you're just going to be another guy that is trying to make money into an industry that is already saturated. Many years ago, I had a personal trainer, and I asked him, who is the clients that you're looking at servicing? What is your ideal client? And he said, look, I'm in the fitness space. I'm looking at retired sports people. And I said, what if you made it more specific than that? What if you focused on a more niche market? He said, okay, let's focus on retired rugby players only. Like, okay, we're getting closer. And for those that watch rugby, you know that rugby, each team is divided into two parts. You have the forwards, which are the heavier guys, and you have the backline players, which are kind of the faster guys. I said, what if you only focused on forwards? No. Not even forwards. What if you only focused on props, which are the guys that are right in front of the scrum? So that is one single position. And he said, I'm not limiting my market by only focusing on one or two players in an entire team. I'm like, yes and no. But if you focus on one specific individual, you get to understand the thinking of that one specific person. So instead of trying to implement a blanket approach where one size fits all and you're doing fitness drills for all of them, you're doing strength training and conditioning, you might miss the mark because now you're just giving everybody what you think they want. If you focus on props specifically, you can help them with their scrumming techniques, you can help them how to better lift the locks in the line out, you can help them with their mauling techniques, you can help them with their fitness at their level, because keep in mind the props are the heavier guys, so they're not as mobile, they can't get around the field as quickly as some of the other positions on the field. As someone that played prop in rugby, a message like that, a service like that would resonate with me far deeper than any other fitness coach that is out there that can help me get into shape or help me improve my game. And to answer his question, am I limiting my market? I told him I would rather you increase your conversion rate in a smaller pool than take random shots in the dark thinking that someone is out there. When you're fishing for a very specific kind of fish, you try to do as much research as you can. So if you're looking at yellowtail, you want to find out what time of the day do they swim, what kind of waters do they swim in, are they in the Atlantic or are they in the Pacific, what kind of bait do they best respond to, and that is what you use to get them. If you just go into any waters any time of the day, cast your net and you just start pulling out, more than likely you're going to get all sorts of other kind of fish, not the fish that you want. So you need to understand your market, you need to know your client, this is who they are, this is what they're doing. Even if you're only getting 1 out of 5, I would rather you get 1 out of 5 than 30 out of 3,000. Okay, so if you're looking at rugby clubs, and granted, there are only 2 props per rugby team, and I know if you're not rugby players, just bear with me here for a second. If there are only 2 props per rugby team, and each club only has 3 teams, that is potentially 6 props. Now, in the Western Cape, there's close to 400 rugby teams. You multiply that by 400. Right? That is already 2,400 potential props that you have that are out there. Now your fishing pond that you're collecting some of your clients from is already bigger and your conversion rate will be a lot more. So let's say half of them would say, okay, I would come on board. So of the 2,500, you divide that by 2, it's 1,200. And if you're charging them, let's say a moderate fee of 500 Rand per month, you take that, multiply that by 500 Rand. You have a business that is potentially generating 600,000 Rand per month by only focusing on one position in the rugby club. But most of us were looking at the whole team, and I'm saying, I don't want to focus on 1 or 2 guys, I want to focus on all 15. But as soon as you try to focus on all 15, each of those have different needs, and you're not going to resonate, you're not going to, the point of sales is what is called to establish rapport. If you can't connect with that person, if they feel that you're just another salesman trying to get my money, forcing your products down my throat, you're not going to make that connection. If it's a general service that you're offering, you are competing with everybody else that is out there. But as soon as you make it niche, and one of my mentors always told me, the riches are in the niches. As soon as you make it niche, and even though it might look like you are shrinking your market and your fishing pool exponentially, rather get 1 out of every 5 than 3 out of every 3,000. So that is general consulting versus specific consulting. Number 7, hotels. Now, there are so many people that came to me and said, my dream was always to open up a hotel. That's my retirement plan, and I'm actually helping one of our clients set up, and not set up, buy a hotel in a province just north of where we are now. And the amount of red tape that they need to go through just to qualify to get some of this funding. And even if they are the perfect candidate, they're not getting 100% of that funding. So they still have to cough up a few million to get that. Now remember, this is an extremely capital intensive industry. If you're going into the hotel space, right, you cannot open up a bottom tier hotel. It has to be a high premium quality hotel. And that is going to cost you 8, maybe even 9 digits to set something like that up. If I had the option of traveling, let's say to Johannesburg or up Africa, and I had the option of either going to a lower end hotel slash motel as opposed to an Airbnb, I'd rather go the Airbnb route because most people don't have pleasant experiences in lower end hotels. I would rather go to a nicer Airbnb, which is in the same price category, than a lower end hotel or motel, because for me that is better value for money. So if you are looking at playing into this or if you're looking at playing in this industry, understand that one, it is a capital, it is extremely heavy in terms of capital. Operating expenses is sky high because nobody's going to look after your property and your assets the way you would look after that. And remember, there's new people that are coming in, day out. So it's not just the maintenance costs, but your laundry costs, your staffing costs, your rental costs, your utilities, all of those. Unless you know this industry back and front, you have strong networks and contacts in this game, I wouldn't recommend that you play in this space. Rather look at the Airbnb model, even if it's just to understand the market. Warren Buffett always said, never test the depth of the water with both feet. So if you're looking at going into this space, rather build up your network and your industry's knowledge by starting with the Airbnb. And I know there's lots of mixed emotions about the Airbnb arbitrage model, but it's still a safer bet because you don't necessarily have to own the property that you are looking at renting. In fact, the complex that we are staying in, there's a lady over here, she manages 4 to 5 properties and they use it as Airbnb, and she actually makes a decent amount of money from that business model alone. And then second, lastly, we have car washes. Now, car wash can be a really good business, but it depends on your staffing, it depends on the location, it depends on the pricing. There are too many things that will just have to work in perfect harmony for you to see any kind of returns on this. And again, the nicer the location, the higher the rental is going to be. And if you're not there driving it yourself, remember, people, they come to work, they work for you. They're not necessarily there to buy into your vision, to your model. They're there to look after their own needs. They're there to feed their families. They're there to grow themselves. So it's not something that you need to take personally, but it's just the way things work, especially car washes. Most of the people that work at car washes, they earn a very small income, so you don't necessarily get the best out of them. So if you're not managing it yourself, or if you don't have a good enough manager that is looking after the numbers, looking after the customer's experience when they are coming there, you don't have a good business. So instead of going for the conventional car wash style business, rather look at a subscription model. So if you know you have a client that comes there once a week and they pay $100, part of why they might not want to come back is because you have a good price. That means they have to wait 45 minutes, an hour to get your car washed. And people just don't have that kind of time. So it means that they have to invest 3 hours per week just to have their car washed. There's such a lot of competitors that are out there. You might find it difficult to build a sustainable, loyal client base. Offer your clients a subscription where they pay 500 Rand per month, or maybe even 400 Rand per month. And for that, they get unlimited car washes. Or if you want to, you can put a cap in there, but maybe as a starter, you can put it on and say, listen, for 500 Rand per month, we can wash your car as often as you'd like us to. Now, realistically speaking, although unlimited sounds nice, you're not going to wash your car more than once, maybe twice a week if you had a bit of a muddy week. What then happens is you're opening yourself up to a bigger market. People saying, okay, look, I can pay 500 Rand per month. I don't mind that, on condition that I don't want to spend 3 hours waiting there. Then you can schedule it. So if you know that you'd like washing your cars on a Friday or on a Saturday or on a Wednesday, you can go into the app, which is $500 a month to create these days. You can go into the app and schedule that time slot, so by the time you get there, they're already waiting for you. You don't have to wait another 45 minutes to an hour to get your car washed. And when you are there, it's a quick in and out process. You can even add extra bells and whistles if they are premium clients, but that we can explore further on as we progress with this channel. For now, we want to keep it as basic as possible. And that way, if you know that you are bringing on 500 clients on that subscription model, you take that 500, multiply that by 500 Rand per month, you already have a business that is 250,000 Rand. So with that predictability, you can plan better. If you know that you need to employ X amount of staff, You don't have to take on the risk of saying, okay, you all have to come to work today, and if the weather is not pleasant, or if you know that this might not go according to plan on this particular day, and now you don't have as much cars as you projected you would have, you still have to pay your staff, but you might have only washed 2 cars on that day. So this is a better way of managing a business that has to work with all sorts of conditions to make it perfect. And then lastly, business software. Now, a lot of us, we have this vision of, I want to start an app, or I want to create the service for a business. I want them to pay me a licensing fee, or I want them to pay me a retainer fee of 5,000 Rand per month. And for that, we will give them access. If you're looking at business software specifically, there's such a lot of companies that are out there. There's Monday.com, there's Trello, there's all these other business services that have much bigger budgets to spend on marketing. I mean, as soon as I open YouTube, I'm seeing another advert on Monday.com. So they have the money to outmuscle you from a marketing perspective. So instead of trying to compete with them, it might be in your interest to join them. And by joining them, you could become an affiliate. If you already have networks within the space and you want to make a bit of money in there, you can actually take their brand to your market. And that way you can make money without investing in the infrastructure, without investing in staff, and just benefiting from the potential commission. And yes, it might be one transaction, but because they're paying on a monthly basis, your income can then grow as a result of that. So those are the 9 industries we'd recommend you would avoid if you're looking at starting a business in 2024. If you find value on this channel, please like and subscribe, share to those people that you know that are starting their own business or thinking of starting their own business. We've also compiled today's episode in notes. So if you'd like those notes, please send us an email. It would be notes@businessfundamentalsacademy.co.za, or lowercase one word. So notes@businessfundamentalsacademy.co.za. And if you got value from the show, please like, subscribe, share to your friends. We'll be back next week, same time, same place. Until then, goodbye and God bless.